I'll lead the show off with this. There we go.
Nice.
All right, everyone. We're on tonight with James Hansen.
What are you drinking there?
This is Utah Brewing Company. It's out of Ogden. It's called the OG Juice. Have no clue. Looks like it's a juicy India Pale Ale.
Jealous.
Yeah.
I got Mountain Dew and caffeine.
You got Mountain Dew. Anyhow.
I should have brought a drink to this.
Yeah, you should have.
Yeah.
You get thirsty after an hour, man.
Yeah. Anyways, welcome to the Twilla Happy Hour. I'm Jared.
I'm David.
And on with us tonight is James Hansen. He is the tribute from the Libertarian Party for the U.S. Senate, correct?
That is correct. I'm the Libertarian nominee.
All right. All right.
Well,
And
congratulations on that.
yeah, good to see. Well, I guess you could say the Democrats have a third party option because they chose to go with McMullen, who's running as an independent, but the Democrats bypassed their own party member to go with him. But
Not cool.
yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Go on, Jimmy.
Well, I followed that pretty closely because I knew it was going to affect the dynamics of the race. And so when that happened, I was watching the convention and, I think the vote at convention at the Democratic convention here for Utah, it was like 43%. So, it wasn't a landslide. It was to back McMullen and not put Cal Weston, their own candidate, forward.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've gone to some events at Capitol Hill and other places, I've met several individuals who were quite upset with the decision of the Utah Democratic Party to not advance their own candidate.
I agree. We've had Cale on. We really like Cale. He's a good guy. We've had McMullen on. He was a nice guy also. I do feel like, I don't know. Do you think something like that would chase maybe weaker Democrats away from the party or chase them out from voting completely?
Well, there's, for one issue, if you're a voter and certain issues are the main reason you're voting Democrat, like that disenfranchised, I think, a big block of their voters. Particularly because McMullen had the background of in 2016 when he ran as a presidential candidate, he ran right of Trump. Mike Lee voted for Evan McMullen in the 2016 presidential election, and he made several very hard statements on marriage equality, abortion rights, and nobody has forgotten that. Like those screen captures of things he said in the past in his 2016 campaign, those are widely circulated on. I've joined and followed some Democrat groups to help get my name out there and talk to people. And I've seen that chatter on the social media feeds, and I've heard it talking to people at events. And so, there's some people who, they just see McMullen as GOP man number 2. So they're not happy with that decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Well, let's go on into your candidacy.
Well, how about background first?
Let me ask a question real quick pertaining to what we had going on. Do you think you're going to be able to assuade some of those disillusioned Democrats to vote Libertarian this go around?
Absolutely, I do.
Okay.
Conversations I've already had, prominent members of the Utah Democrat Party, me, and I haven't had like a full-on public endorsement or anything, but I've had members of the party retweet me, say they're going to vote for me. So I absolutely think I'm going to pick up some of those voters.
That'll be good. How do you think because the National Libertarian Party, their message has changed this year.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to affect your run? Because their message, the National Party was running more on a Democrat message for the last, 11 years or so. And this year it changed and it went It went to where it didn't blend in with either of them. So how do you think that'll work? Oh, we lost your video feed.
Sorry, I was adjusting the blinds. I was
Okay.
looking like a zebra.
Oh,
The
okay.
sun shifted, and all of a sudden there were lines on my face. I apologize.
Looking like Max Headroom.
Yeah, I had to find the quiet. I'm actually in the laundry room. This is the quietest room in the house.
Is it? Hey, how many kids you got?
4.
Oh,
4 children.
That's a lot of handfuls.
I'm surprised you're not out at the intersection just watching cars go by to talk to us, so it's quiet.
Yeah. Anywho's, so sorry, I lost the question. You just
what's your thoughts on, because the National
the
Libertarian
National Party messaging? Yeah. Sorry.
It didn't go right, but it dropped a lot of the woke messaging that's been cruising along in its staple. In my opinion, I feel like it became a little more inclusive as to where it doesn't dissuade anyone from joining. Of course, the downside with that is the woke are extremely combative, and so they're dissuaded unless you kneel to them. But do you think that message will affect your chances of peeling off some Democrats?
I hope not. As far as, changes in direction of the National Party and changes to the platform, I thought it was unfortunate. They took 2 things off the platform at the national convention this year. One was, we had an abortion plank where we clearly stated that, abortion is an individual choice and shouldn't be interfered by with, government or, federal or state overreach. That was struck off the National Party platform. And then there was a second part where we used to call, we find bigotry and racism abhorrent and, appalling. I forget the exact verbiage. But they took those lines out. There was they
didn't take out what they did with the racism one is they said extending civil rights to every U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
Which in a way you could kind of argue includes the abortion one. Not that I want to get into an abortion debate, but I always thought it was weird for them to take a hard stance on pro-abortion, which discludes a huge part of a religious group that wants liberty from joining the party.
Yeah. My thoughts on it is, to the National Party, I think I trend more, maybe what you would call a social libertarian. I grew up in a religious conservative background, but personally, I just think to each his own. One thing that has made me unhappy about politics over the past, 4 to 6 years is so much of it is just, rhetoric about these cultural things. This person's being woke, this person's trying to cancel me. And it's like, listen, this isn't the function of government. Like, that's the function of communities and societies. The government, just needs to make sure individual rights are protected. Your right to live your life as you're going to live, provide for our common defense, what the things that it's doing. I'm not an anarchist. I'm not coming in to try to abolish, all public programs and things like that. And so if you're that kind of libertarian that thinks we would be better to burn the system down and have nothing, then, that's not the flavor I represent, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't burn it down, but we could remove a few planks here and there and recycle the wood, sell the windows,
restructure some things for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we could find jobs for those ATF and IRS agents elsewhere. Anyways,
Sure. Yeah.
Well, let's get on. Tell us about your background. Says you're from Missouri, right?
Yeah, I grew up in the state of Missouri, just on a dairy farm, pretty rural, uh, Southwest Missouri. I grew up LDS, served a mission in Taiwan, so I came back, got a degree in physics and Mandarin Chinese from Missouri State University. Came out to Utah, started a PhD in physics at the University of Utah. Did that for 2 years. I was doing some science outreach on the side with Granite School District and Salt Lake School District, helping out with science fairs, and was really enjoying that, and wasn't loving the research side of my PhD. And anyways, just made the transition after 2 years at the University of Utah. I, applied to some teaching jobs and jumped into teaching here in the state, and have continued to teach ever since then.
So where do you teach? What do you teach?
Yeah, so I'm in my eighth year. I'm currently down in Monument Valley, Utah. So I'm right on the southern end of the state, on the Navajo Nation, and I teach. I teach junior high science for 7th and 8th graders. I teach physics, and then I teach an engineering class this year. But I've also taught earth science, astronomy, geology over my 8 years.
Beautiful. And that's a beautiful place. Monument Valley is amazing.
Oh yeah. It's, walk out, as I walk from our apartment to the school every day, I just I don't think many people have this scenic of a view on the walk over to work or school.
Hey, James, let me ask you this about your college career. Did they really have a 4-year degree in gender studies?
Not that I ever saw, I don't know.
Rumor has it, but okay.
There's been a lot of rumors going around lately.
I'm sure you can take a class or two.
I find a lot of stuff hard to believe. Like the latest one I heard at the barbecue, that they're putting litter boxes in high school. I can't believe it. Please say it isn't true.
I've not experienced that in Utah. I've heard that from Missouri family.
And that's the thing. You always hear it from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I actually heard that it's happening in here. We are up in Tooele. Yeah. That it's happening up here. And I imagine, were it true, I mean, it might be true, but were it true, janitors would be on strike, because that's the end of that thought process. There is someone has to pick up the litter box and remove it, unless they got like one of them pull tabs that you see at parks for doggy doos, where you get the little green bag and see some 14-year-old in there spinning the bag. I don't know how it works, but anyways,
here's my thought. You sometimes will see a YouTube video of someone who has gone to the trouble to train their cat or train their dog to use the toilet. So a cat or a dog using a toilet is the pinnacle of, pet training. I think any of these students should aspire to that same standard.
So we start off with the cellophane, lay it over the toilet, sprinkle some litter on it. I don't know.
Personally, I haven't seen that at all. I've heard rumors, like you said. So I don't know.
I can't believe it, but
Health and Human Services and sanitation and just, standards of what we expect to accomplish and do.
How about mental wellness? My God.
Yeah.
It seems way off of the direction we want to go as a society.
For sure. Sure. So, well, grew up conservative, rural, LDS. Are you still a member of the church?
Yeah, I haven't taken my name off the records or anything, but I haven't been to church much in the past few years. Okay. When my parents visit, I don't make them go to church by themselves. I take them. and I, as a school teacher, I know a lot of the community members who are LDS. I'll go to functions and, fathers and sons camp out or ward barbecue, service projects, help somebody move. So I'm not anti or anything, just personally, it's kind of when COVID happened, I started, you just weren't going to church, and it's man, I kind of enjoy this Sunday, spend time with my kids, maybe go on a hike. And so I just haven't been super active.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways that you can practice religion other than going into a temple or a church.
Yeah.
really
and
are.
not donating 10% of your income to, anyways. So let's go on with your message. Lay out. Well, is there a Utah party message?
We have the platform, and basically, like when you join the party, the main thing is they ask you is, do you believe in the use of government force to enact any ideal? And it's a yes no question. So, I think the main thing for the Utah party is, voluntarism. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Any society or any person could advocate for something, but the use of government force against individuals to force them into something, that would violate what the Utah party stands for.
I am a very heavily leaning libertarian type individual, but I hold a wad of phone chargers in my hand, each with a different end receptacle, maybe a different end receptacle on each end. And I think to myself, I would love to use government force and violence to remove any obstacle that companies have to just universalize the charger. And I don't think that makes me a bad person. I think I can still be a libertarian and use that force and violence to achieve that goal.
Yeah. And for me, if you get on social media and interact in like libertarian chat rooms, there's some pretty extreme people who take it to this end of the spectrum. So I think of it more as a spectrum.
Oh, I know you see the flag behind me, so you know where I stand.
Yeah, I see it more as a spectrum, and there's awful, less awful, neutral, better, best kind of a thing. And there's certain issues that motivated me to run that I would really like our federal government to change direction in those areas.
Have you held any political office before?
No.
So you're diving into the deep end.
Yeah.
Not even with the little arm muscles on, just diving in.
What would differentiate your campaign from Mike Lee, who I consider to be conservatarian, I suppose?
Yeah. I went through his the last few years of bills that he sponsored and proposed, and really, there's a lot that I agree on with Mike Lee. I voted for Mike Lee the last time he was up for election. So, but how I would differ from him is areas that I've identified that are important to me is, and he's been good on this for some countries, military funding and subsidy of arms into conflict zones. He's been good on that with like challenging, the flow of weapons from United States to like Saudi Arabia being used in the conflict against Yemen. But Israel, he has sponsored and voted for the U.S.-Israel Securities Pact and strengthening the Middle East Pact. And both of those provide annual funding, loans, guaranteed loans to Israel, and provide weapons to Israel. And I would not support that. I don't think we should be subsidizing or sending money or weapons to an area where, a lot of people consider that terrorism, Israel against the Palestinian people. And if you look at the casualties in the past year, Israeli, Palestinian, I think there's no Israeli casualties and there's hundreds of Palestinian civilian casualties in the conflicts that keep erupting along the strip there. And why are we playing a role in that? Why should we be sending money or weapons into that conflict?
Now, do we just give the money and weapons to the Jewish state, or do we get something in return for it?
Like the U.S.-Israel Securities Alliance Act, that's just straight up military. So it's like anti-air missiles, like missile defense systems, and it's weapons. It's weapons that we're giving them. The Strengthening the Middle East Securities Act, that's like business loans. It also has to do with giving government more power to cut ties or contracts with companies that are, maybe boycotting Israel. Along those lines, he has voted against, peace talks with Iran and, restarting the nuclear talks with Iran. Doesn't want to negotiate with Iran. And I believe that's more influence from connections with Israel in Congress.
Do you feel like there's something that America could benefit from switching over to the allies of the Palestinians and the Iranians versus the Jewish state?
I'm not advocating that we give weapons to Palestine or weapons to Iran. I'm just advocating that we play a truly neutral role where right now the United States plays a pro-Israel role.
Okay.
Why wouldn't we want to talk with Iran? Why wouldn't we want to be negotiating with them, interacting with them, walking back from, extremes or lines in the sand, so to speak? In my mind, open relations with every company or every country, free trade, dialogue, having that channel of dialogue open is in our best interest and in the best interest of their people as well. The main reason that has motivated me to be active in politics and to run in this election season is foreign policy. I feel like a lot of what America has done, a lot of the decisions we've made and how we interact with other countries has been more from how can we strengthen our clout on the world stage, and less guided by how can we ensure that there's more stability on the world stage, and less conflict, whether or not it means maybe we take in a region on the other side of the globe, maybe we're not the number one power player, maybe we let other people step up and take bigger roles. And even though maybe that doesn't give us our best geopolitical interests, I believe it's in the best interest of our people and the best interest of the civilians in those countries, and that it's just stability.
So,
Go ahead.
Now, are you talking about kind of how we have in Africa, where China's kind of taking a lead there?
In like loaning money and helping with a lot of the infrastructure in Africa?
Yeah, loaning money, infrastructure, things like that.
If China wants to do that, let China do that. I've seen bills. I've heard Mitt Romney talk about how we need to take a more active role in China, and why? And a lot of this is fueled by, we can't let China expand its influence on the world stage. And there's been a lot of saber rattling over the past few years. And I have a special place in my heart for the Taiwanese people. So that's where I serve my mission. But if we were to go into a state of conflict with China, or enter into a war with China, millions of people would die and be displaced, and that would be awful. And so when we weigh on the scales, U.S. influence and control versus peace and stability, I think peace and stability should weigh higher on the scale than U.S. influence and control.
Yeah. No, I definitely see your point there. I mean, it's not like we've had any military boondoggles since World War II.
Yeah, none.
And I completely agree. I think I don't know. I don't carry heartburn over Obama going into the nuclear accords with Iran. I definitely don't. But then again, I like that Trump seemed to bolster a lot of peace in the Middle East. He gets zero credit for it, but I mean, right now, Israeli civilian aircraft now fly over those Middle Eastern countries that, you know, Saudi Arabia and Yemen and that, because, you know, got them communicating.
Yeah. They signed that peace treaty. There's been a lot of ceasefires.
The Abrahamic Accords.
And that was a good thing. I mean, I didn't vote for Trump personally. I voted for the Libertarian candidate in 2016 and 2020, but I was pleased when with the developments in the Middle East under the Trump presidency.
Yeah, it was good.
It was probably the thing I liked most about his presidency was developments in the Middle East. What was happening there? It wasn't, you know,
and North Korea.
Everything happened, and North Korea. You know,
Yeah.
there were talks going on. People were meeting. I would like the world to reach a normalized state where we're not seeing other nations as the enemy. You know, I think we have to be willing to exist in a world where, you know, their government's going to run differently than our government. You know, their next door neighbors are going to be most interested in making political and economic connections with, say, let's talk about Russia. You know, I feel horrible for the civilians in Ukraine and Russia along in that conflict zone and what's been going on over the past 8 years. But what the question that I wonder about is, like, why have we, like, if you go back to the Orange Revolution and the Euromaidan, you know, we've been putting money into, you know, The Guardian covered this really well. We've been putting money into the recall campaign that happened in 2016. We put money into funding and training activists in the Orange Revolution in 2007.
Are you saying that our CIA fomented a revolution in a foreign country to get the outcome we wanted financially and politically?
Absolutely. And we were trying to, and they say, well, maybe the end goal is stability. Okay. But I really think the big motivation for the people who are doing this and our government is we're increasing U.S. control and clout in other countries and weakening our geopolitical enemies like Russia. And at the end of the day, you know, Ukraine is next door neighbors with Russia.
Mm-hmm.
If I was a Ukrainian, you know, I'd want to be on good terms with my next door neighbor.
It almost feels like we're trying to foment a permanent enemy.
Yeah.
So that we can keep that military spending up. We got to have a big enemy, you know, maybe a country with the second most nuclear bombs.
Well, I'm worried, you know, if, you know, in the past year, anti-Russian and anti-Chinese sentiment from sitting members of Congress post, you know, talking and tweeting, and, you know, the visits to Taiwan, you know, you should be free to visit Taiwan. I want to take a trip back to Taiwan. I haven't been, and, you know, since I left, I would love to go back to Taiwan, see friends and eat the delicious food. But the escalation in anti-Chinese and anti-Russian rhetoric is alarming. And do we, you know, you said, you know, we need an enemy to keep up the need for the defense funding and the growth of defense funding. And it's like, okay, are we biting off more than we can chew? Are we going to, you know, I forget what the saying is so much, but waking up a bear that, you know, maybe you can't handle, or, you know, annoying a dog that's going to turn right around and bite you. We've seen conflict over the past 2 decades in the Middle East and what that's done to our country, what it's cost us in lives, what it's cost us in money. And then on the other side of that, what it's cost those countries. If you look at Iraq from the 80s and compare it to Iraq today, you know, and these are reports from UNICEF and, you know, the UN, 1.5 million Iraqi civilians have died over the past 30 years because of economic sanctions and embargoes and conflicts. And we imposed those and we advocated for those. And to me, sorry, that's immoral for us to be taking these actions on the global stage. It's immoral and reckless to escalate conflicts at the expense of peace and stability, because the people who it hurts are civilians, and disproportionately hurts children, women and children. And those are the biggest casualties. And so I would love to have a more peaceful foreign policy, and a foreign policy that is focused more on peace and stability and less on making sure the United States is the number one power all around the globe, because that's not sustainable in my mind.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree with him. Just think of all that money that we could use here at the home front if we weren't spending it on military action overseas just to keep our boot on somebody else's neck.
I'd hate to see what Lockheed Martin would invent for a vehicle or battery storage or something that we desperately need.
Absolutely.
I mean, I guess the other argument is, but look at all the bad things that these people these hostile countries are doing to their neighbors. And yeah, it is bad. It's horrible. But is it any of our business? And I guess maybe I could say, well, if I see someone breaking into my neighbor's house, wouldn't I shoot them?
What if you saw someone, maybe, stealing your neighbor's not your neighbor's, 15 houses down, stealing their newspaper in the afternoon because the neighbor stole their newspaper in the morning?
But I wouldn't know that. I
That's
just
right.
see the
Seems like there's a lot of we don't know that. Like right now, Ukraine, that's a hot button issue. We played a part in starting that in 2014. We kicked off fomenting the Orange Revolution over there. We kicked it off in Egypt. We kicked it off everywhere.
Yeah, and I'm not saying other countries and their people can't advocate for better systems and have, natural uprisings. And as a private citizen, if you want to be involved in that, absolutely. But I think the choices that our government makes should be focused on peace and stability, not putting into power people who are pro-West versus pro-whatever country it happens to be.
Have we ever had a decent regime change operation that worked out in our favor?
Man, that is a good question.
I don't think so.
Well, the 3 times we did it during the Vietnam War for the South Vietnamese, we overthrew the South Vietnamese president, our ally, the 3 times while we were over there. And we kept getting it wronger and wronger. South Korea, Syngman Rhee, we did kind of a soft coup on him. Well, we disarmed him and just in time for the North Koreans to invade. I don't think there's one.
I mean, didn't we kind of create the Bolshevik Revolution as well? No,
that wasn't us. That was Germany.
Okay.
I'm sure we paid for it and aided them in that. But no, Germany did that to knock Russia out of World War I.
Yeah. But also by not intervening in something similar to this would be the communist Chinese took over the mainland China and kicked the capitalists out to Taiwan.
They kicked the Nationalist Party out. There's a deeper argument with that. And yeah, that's a more complicated one. And if you look at the history timeline, it seemed like we pulled our support from our ally in World War II, the Nationalists, just in time for the communists to attack, and Russia kept supporting the communists. So maybe, I don't know. I like your message. I like that you're focused on a international message.
Yeah.
How do we get to a point where, because right now we've got an economy built on destruction. And I would like to see us, I like the idea of us setting an example on the world of a bolstered, strong economy with liberties. And ever since we've started this path since World War II of permanent war, I don't feel like I've gotten any freer. And maybe in the micro we have, but in the macro we haven't, because like the Patriot Act, that came out because of our wartime footing of the end of World War II.
Yeah.
Well, matter of fact, you can't talk about World War II without talking about World War I. So, I mean, where do you go with this?
I was thinking about that last night. Like, post World War II, we've kind of been in this state of. I've been reading Legacy of Ashes. It's a book on the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've read it or heard of it.
I haven't read it. I've heard of it.
And I'm only a few chapters in. I'm in like chapter 5. But it's kind of looking at the creation of the CIA, which kind of came about after World War II. And a big thing that fueled that, was the Red Scare. And we have to be opposed to communism, and any advancement of communism is an attack against the United States, and we need to see it as that, and we need to fight against it. And we entered into multiple conflicts over the several next decades to fight communism. And at the end of the day, if you look at the lives lost on both sides, and not just soldiers, civilians, you just have to, was it worth it? Was it worth it to lose so many lives?
No.
To do that. And the answer in my mind is absolutely not. It was not worth it. It was not worth it for us to reach around the globe and fight communism.
This is the hardest of arguments, because let's remember, prior to World War II, Russia had taken over Ukraine, had taken over Georgia. I mean, the Holodomor is arguably, because of its short time frame, the worst atrocity to happen throughout all the 1900s, including, if you count the Maoist revolution, which is the putting numbers on the board. No one tops Mao, but the Holodomor was 1 year long and took guesstimates are 7 to 10 million in 1 year.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you guys know that Russia and Germany had a joint plan to invade Poland at the same time. Just Russia fake stepped in and then went in 2 weeks later because, Stalin was fairly intelligent and let Hitler take all the heat on that. But they had a treaty to invade Poland at the same time. So I can understand why we had this footing against communism. And communism had proved itself to be on the march. I mean, what did they do when Eisenhower was president? They built a wall around Berlin and started starving a city just because they could. So I understand that argument, but I feel we're in a Faustian compromise where we built an economy of war around fighting them. And now we've got to continue to make enemies so that our economy of war can keep feeding itself.
Yeah. And I guess you're right. There's a lot up to interpretation, and you could definitely come on either side of this argument, particularly in some of these more major conflicts. But you've got to remember, back then, we voted in Congress to enter World War II,
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't happened since then. All these other interventions have been, security and, authorization of military use. There hasn't been an official act of Congress to declare war against an enemy and, go out and say, here's the objective we're going to accomplish. We're going to beat the enemy, and then we're going to be done. And, if the whole country is united in going to war, then the whole country is united in going to war. But what I don't like is, we passed a authorization for the use of military force in post 9/11, and then we continue that, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden have continued to reference that to justify any type of action they want to take.
Well, isn't that what we're using to justify paying off student loans right now?
Is that
I think they're using what they call the HEROES Act, which is a part of that a part of that military act, they're using the Heroes Act to justify paying off student loans. From what I understand.
I haven't dug too deeply into
Which is,
it. My wife
well, that's
asked
why
about it the other day.
that's why
And I
Biden
said,
can do it.
yeah, they'll probably challenge it in court. You know, people probably shouldn't get too excited yet that their loan status is going to suddenly drop $10,000 or $20,000.
So, on that topic, as a libertarian, do you think that a student should be able to file bankruptcy to get rid of a loan that he can't repay back if he spent his entire existence or his entire savings on a gender studies degree?
Huh.
So essentially increase the risk for the people who are lending the money to said student.
Yep.
You mean like how it was 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think risk is an important part of any loan, because if you're guaranteeing the loan, basically you're giving that money to the people who gave out the loans. So it's not that I'm getting richer, if I was getting a student loan forgiven, it's that the people who made the loans are going to get richer. And who holds the loans? The federal government and banks, they sewed that out to people, manage the system for them. So, someone's going to get richer. I don't know who, but it's not going to be me or you. Along those lines, I think risk is an important thing to be in the market. And we have people who get guaranteed loans and people who get protected from risk, and yet they get to keep all the profit. That's an argument that I've seen that makes a lot of sense to me. You have these big corporations, we subsidize the investment, we subsidize the risk, and then we don't tax any of the profit, So when I see someone from like the Green Socialist Party post something like that, I'm like, it makes a lot of sense. If we're gonna subsidize upfront all this stuff, then we definitely have a right to the profits at the end. And that's the second main thing that's gotten me into politics is anti-corporatism. We give so much money to industry and big corporations. People are upset, and this is kind of hypocritical. You have all these Republican members of Congress ranting and raving about this, $300 billion student loan forgiveness. And I'm not saying it was the right thing to do, but they literally voted on trillions of dollars in handouts just a few years ago. And many of them, their own companies, received loan forgiveness through PPP loans. And so I was like, you can't have it both ways. I respect Thomas Masty a lot because he was opposed to the PPP loans, and he was opposed to this. And he's consistent and honest in how this is an issue, and he's not filling his pockets on one side and then decrying these other groups of people getting public subsidy on the other side.
It is tough. It is tough. And it's also tough when you see people become politicians and suddenly they magically become rich and magically know where to invest their money when the government in a month is going to tack round the sale, I guess is what you could say.
The CHIPS Act, the recently passed CHIPS Act that provided like $50 billion in direct subsidy to microchip manufacturers. Oh, hey, Nancy Pelosi's husband invested in all these chip software X months ago, and that's great for him. Wow.
Remember, she's a public servant, James.
Yeah.
Always thinking of us.
I while we're talking about that, I absolutely think we should pass a law that bars members of Congress, members of the federal government from trading individual stocks.
I would make it deeper than that. I would make it the one time I'm going to agree with the Oons. I would make it a 3-generational thing. That 3 generations, when you sign into that, have to enter a market-placed value 401k type investment program. So you can still invest. You can still invest as much as you want, but it's going to be invested on the same programs that that the average 401k, so Vanguard system, so they still get their investments, they still get their growth, they still get their activity in the market. They're just not in control of it. It's handed over to the 401k, and maybe that will incentivize them to make political economic decisions that carry the well-being of the nation in mind.
Well, a government employee has a system called the TSP.
Yeah. Let them sign into the,
and that's what we have to use in the military for, you know, if we want matching and things
thrift
like
savings program.
That should be the only thing they ever play in.
And that's fine. Let them, I would actually like it if they entered in the TSP, you know, same.
Their program.
I think the government should carry their medical stuff through the Veterans Administration. And we'll see the VA might get some changes.
Yeah.
You know, let them go for their dental and vision at the VA. And I think you might see Novocaine enter the building once in a while, maybe some gas.
Yeah. And that's the other side of, you know, decades and decades and decades of military conflicts and generating, you know, veterans with disabilities and veterans with trauma. And then the type of care they receive when they come back to the States, and people, you know, voting no on packages to increase help for those veterans. Like that's immoral and disgusting. You're going to create these issues, and then you're not going to take care of these issues. Mm-hmm. And I would say it about refugees as well. You know, we talk about civilians that die in conflicts, but, you know, for every civilian that dies in a conflict, it feels like there's 10 refugees that flee the area. You know, just numbers that I've looked at recently, I think Syria's had around 13 to 14 million refugees out of Syria, you know, over 1 million coming out of Ukraine. I don't know what the number's up to now, but well over 1 million coming out of Ukraine. You know, we're displacing people there. And when people get displaced and they have that instability in their life, they're much more susceptible to all kinds of things, disease, you know, stress related diseases, you know, being attacked. Like a woman who's safe, stable in her home is much safer than a woman who's living in a tent city in a refugee camp, as far as like violence against women and children, as far as like sexual and physical abuse. And so when we displace these people, you know, we got to think about the refugees as well. It's not just the civilian deaths and the soldier deaths. You got to think about all the people who are disrupted and displaced, and the businesses and livelihoods and lives that are ruined. Like imagine being a child and having to flee your home in Ukraine because your apartments and your school is getting blown up. Or imagine being a child in Palestine or Yemen or Syria, and you live in constant fear of, you know, mortar fire and, you know, different battling factions of, you know, radicals going down the streets in their, you know, trucks and cars with machine guns on top of them. And I can't even imagine a child growing up in that kind of a setting and being able to live a normal life when they grow up. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And when we don't look at that and we kind of just gloss it over, and it never gets in the news and gets the coverage it needs, it makes me sick. And you have great organizations that are trying to come in and like fill the gap and help those people. You know, I'm a big proponent of the IRC, the International Refugee Committee, UNICEF. You know, I'm a monthly donator to both of those groups because I feel like they do good work trying to help the casualties of war, these refugees and these people who are disrupted and displaced, and helping them get back to somewhat of a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think of it like this. How many of our vets come back with PTSD after spending a few months over there? Well, those people, they're immersed into that culture. They don't know anything else. And so, you know.
And then you got their neighbor countries that have to, don't have to, but that give up some of their property and wealth and treasure for that. And then also immerse these children into their communities, and need to figure out how to provide, this is the hard part to say, but how to provide, or if they provide, a means of mental care to bring them out, because a child raised under those conditions like that traditionally have a lot of, let's say, social problems.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So the neighbor countries take
To
that
their
in.
own.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Afghanistan, I think, is one of the ideal poster children for this. You know, the Taliban is a hard group. The Taliban meets students, and those were the child age. When Russia first invaded, those are the child age people that grew up under the Russian occupation and damage, and they grew up as hardened individuals. And we see they're a little radical.
Yeah. And let's, you know, we said Russia occupation there. Starting in the 70s, we were funneling money, weapons, and training to oppositional groups.
We wanted to give them a Vietnam. It's exactly.
Absolutely.
But Russia downright invaded. I mean, twice they tried to assassinate the president. And if you ever get the chance, read about Russia's attempts to assassinate the Afghani president, because it is comical. First time they try it, the Russian doctor wasn't in on the deal at the dinner, saved his life. Second time they tried it, they poured the toxin in Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola is a agent that neutralizes said toxin. So it just gave him a stomach ache. It's the funniest story ever. Russia was not very good at it back then.
Through luck, this Afghani president survives.
They got a lot better at it, Jared.
Well, or have they? Have they been trying to assassinate so many more people, and we only hear about the, 5 or 6 that we know about? I don't know, but it's the funny. Seriously, read up on the Russians' attempt to assassinate the Afghani president. It is dang hilarious.
I'll put it on my reading list.
It's just it's a quick read. They made 3 attempts, and 2 of them, one, the assassin didn't know what he was doing. The second one, the doctor, the Russian, I think it was even a Russian army doctor, didn't know what was going on and saved his life. It's hilarious.
I would not want to be him. That Dr. Pride. Hey, since we're on the topic of refugees, what would be your ideal border policy? What would be your solution for what's going on currently?
I like open borders. When we started having refugees coming in, and Trump decreased the cap on the number of people we were going to let in and from certain countries. I saw that as unfair, in that we were creating these refugee crises in those countries that these refugees are coming from. And I'm not saying the border needs to be absolutely open and people walk across, but from people that I've talked to who have legally immigrated to our country, it's not an easy process. If you want to legally come to the United States of America, you have to jump through a lot of hoops. And so, if we want people to come here legally, let's make it a more simple process to come to the United States of America legally. I advocate for more open borders. We should definitely simplify the immigration process. I think immigrants bring great things to our country: new cultures, new food, new technology, new people. I'm pro immigration, 100%. I think we should create a path to citizenship for people who are currently here now and want to become citizens. We should make it easier for people to be a part of the United States of America. And that should be our selling point to the world. We talk about pushing democracy and freedom across the globe, and sadly it happens. And democracy and freedom is the justification for all these military actions we're taking. Listen, if democracy and freedom is a wonderful system, then there would be no better sell for democracy and freedom than people coming to our country and taking part in democracy and freedom, and the rest of the world, citizens of the world, seeing that and be like, oh, America really is, they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. This is a great place to go. It's full of opportunity, and that should sell itself. But I am pro-immigration. I love other cultures, and I really don't think we need to be. I feel like there's a lot of strife and like antagonistic type feelings towards immigrants, whether they're legal or illegal, in certain communities. And I think that's wrong.
So I guess the pushback to your idea is we are a welfare socialist state that has a lot of safety net for its citizens that its citizens have built up. And as we take in more people, usually you don't get the highest quality people running across the border. Those people usually stay in their country. And then we get their trodden and broken and unhealthy. And then those males that can actually survive the process of walking through the desert as well. But we get a lot of people that require assistance through the welfare net from our socialist country that our taxpayers pay into. And that is the pushback to your answer. What would be, how would you incorporate that pushback to that answer of yours into your message?
I'm going to address a couple of things there. So the first one was we're getting like the crumbs of society are coming to the United States essentially. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying or
no, it is.
This is opposition to my.
If they're coming in illegally, chances are you are going to get people who can't speak English, people who probably have a lot of health problems, people who have been every girl gets raped across the border on that journey, probably. Think of the mental health that we'll have to provide them as a society, just that alone, in order so that they can function properly, if they can ever function again after such a traumatic experience. Then you're getting all the, I'm not going to get into the war on drugs, but there's a huge criminal element to the border crossings. And I know a lot of people want to say, but we get so many good ones. I would have to say, prove it. And the thing is, you can't prove it. And if I have a blue pill and a red pill and a yellow pill, and someone says one of those might not be poison, I'm not going to take one. So why not just mitigate my risk as a citizen that pays into this social welfare state and say, build a wall and really minimize who comes in and out based upon the value of their capacity.
Yeah.
How do you argue that?
I'm going to address a couple of things there. So one, crumbs of society. I like to think, I'm an educator. I like to think that any human, given the right conditions and the right support, can be successful.
But there is a cost value to that, James, right?
Well, let me, what do you mean the right support?
Well, just they can come into a country that, maybe is economically more free, and they can come in and work. And, let's say you live in South America and you sell empanadas on the side of the street. The money you make selling empanadas in South America is a fraction to the money you would make selling empanadas on State Street in downtown Salt Lake City.
Very true. Of course, the cost of housing down there makes it comparable to where I don't want to get into the economics argument of it, because I'll just I'm more of a Heinleinian when it comes to this question. I say we go full republic on it. If we're going to have this state, we go full republic, come and go as you please, but you have no voting rights. You have no, you have a limited rights to state assistance and state property. So what we'll do is we'll offer kind of the basics lined out, we'll secure your life, your liberty. We'll even go further than Mexico does with U.S. citizens. We'll allow you to buy and own property, but you must become a citizen before you can vote, before you can, sign up for state-funded school. Prior to that, you got to pay your own way.
Service equals citizenship.
You know, I mean, I think good people do come across. I do think inherent with the illegal immigration, you've got someone who's breaking the law to get across. So right from the start, there's a question of risk on their part. That is a risk I personally would not take, is breaking a country's law to enter that country. You see what I'm saying?
But you're already American, though.
So,
and I guess if we're going to go to the source, like,
well, let me finish my thought here. Right. So I do think there are good people, and I know good immigrants that come up here become hard workers. I work in kind of a construction industry, so I get to see them every day, and they are literally the best employees. They're highly intelligent. They're motivated. They do have a chance at a better life, but we must admit that there are certain liberties that are handed out to someone who enters this country on less than legal terms. I guess that's a word we can use. Such as if they enter pregnant, they get to have a baby without any cost occurring to them. You know, whereas our citizens get to eat that cost. And then all of our insurance rates and all of our hospital bills maybe not rise up just because of that, but you can't say there isn't a cost incurred across the board of the citizens who eat the shit of the 35% of their money going to a state, which I'm going to tell you right now, the state offers me damn near very little.
Yeah.
Very little. The state offers me nothing that couldn't be performed better, safer, more efficient on the free market.
Yeah. And I have, I sympathize with that argument. I got a paycheck yesterday and nearly a third of it went to taxes. I was just kind of teasing my wife about, how much of our money we lose. But, and, my father's retired, because of the Affordable Care Act. He's had to purchase health insurance on the open marketplace. He says he's paying about $300 a month for that. He's been retired 3 or 4 years. He hasn't set foot in a doctor's office once, and I'm grateful that my dad is super healthy and hasn't needed to go to a doctor's office. But, he feels a little chapped that, I paid taxes all my life. I paid into Social Security all my life, and now I'm retired and I'm still paying into this system that I'm not using. Like, what gives? And inflation, ramp inflation over the last few years. If you have a job and there's some growth in what you're getting paid, like you can have some flexibility there. But retired people, people in a situation where there is no growth in their income, or they're living on like a fixed Social Security check each month, like, what are they doing right now? Are they can't even leave their homes? Like, I can't even afford to set foot out the door.
What's it going to look like when all the boomers retire?
Yeah.
When we have the largest lump of retirees, what that happens in 3 or 4 years, the bulk of them retire, and all of our taxes are they're just going to print us into oblivion, or all of our taxes are going to have to raise to 50, maybe 60% just to cover the boomer retirement.
I believe both of those things happening simultaneously.
I think you're right.
So I don't know, just to address kind of like this idea of immigration strain on this social safety network that we have in our country. I would say, why do we have so many immigrants coming? What have we done in those South American countries to create conditions that are so awful that people are willing to make this journey, which is not a nice journey? It's a journey that people die on. Like you alluded to, it's a journey that women often suffer, sexual violence on. And then they get here and, it's not like we treat them super nice. You have to go through processing centers. There's been, parents and children are separated. And so you look at South America, like, what issues have we created in South America that we have this flood of people coming to our southern border? And I would blame a lot of the actions of our foreign policy and covert operations by the CIA.
I
that-
think our southern border is
Area.
specifically the war on drugs.
yeah, and then
I don't think the
war,
CIA did much in Mexico. They didn't have to.
yeah,
The DEA did that for them.
yeah.
That the CIA didn't have to. They might try. They would go down there. What would they foment a color revolution against? The cartels?
Yeah, well, you could argue that the CIA created, some of our drug problems
No.
when they
Yes.
started selling LSD and other drugs to finance, so they could have dirty money to finance other operations in other areas.
Little Iran Contra never hurt anyone.
But yeah, the war on drugs.
Yep.
We basically created a system in which the cartel can exist. And if we eliminated the war on drugs, drug use would be safer. There could be safe places where you could go and use drugs. It could be like a business model. Come stay in our hotel and shoot up on crack. Or, I don't do drugs, but however you do meth or cocaine and things like that, heroin. But a model where it's monitored, it's safe. The product you're buying is clean. It's not some shit you're buying off the street, and it could be laced with fentanyl. It would be safer for the users. It would be safer for people.
Mm-hmm.
And people could function. There's absolutely high functioning drug users. I mean, look at our federal government. That was kind of a joke at all of our politicians and leaders who I'm sure quite a few of them use drugs recreationally. And
how
yet
about Wall Street? I mean, we know Wall Street.
Wall Street bankers and listen, the war on drugs costs us money through the prison system, destroys families and communities when you have these people who just want to peacefully use a drug, and we won't let them work. Drug testing is kind of like tapered off, it seems like, over the past few years as states have legalized marijuana. It's kind of like, oh, we can't fire all these people who go home and smoke weed, after work. And that's a good thing, but it just needs to be legalized. There's all this gray area. And I don't know, so many of the problems that we're discussing have been created by the federal government, and the solution is being blocked by the federal government.
I agree.
100%. Well, except here in Utah. I think
Utah.
our state government would block that solution. I mean, as we
they
found
would
out.
probably go to like a DABC type model where it was very regulated.
I don't think we'd even get that. I think we would get, but anyways, no, I agree with you 100%. The war on drugs, I think it has corrupted our society to a point that, I dare say damn near unrepairable.
Yeah.
And it's destroyed Mexico. It would be nice. Well, we've militarized the police. Wouldn't it be nice if we medicalized our enforcement arm of drugs and we figured out how to bring aid and treatment instead of violence and kicking doors in? And then, yeah, you really want to hurt the drug dealer down the street. You want to hurt his business model. You don't send a SWAT team after him. You send a pharmacist after him.
Yeah. Legalize it where it can be safely, cleanly bought. Yeah. And this, I'll broaden this to so many different areas. I think this applies to immigration. I think this applies to sexual violence. It applies to the war on drugs. If we legalize these things that...
Hold on. Are you talking prostitution? Because I'm going to save you real quick. Go to the sexual violence one. I don't think you mean legalize sexual violence, right?
I'm saying by legalizing prostitution.
There you go. There you go.
Prostitution. And it's been shown, so many studies have shown, the ACLU did like a meta study where they looked at 80 different studies. When you legalize sex work, it's safer for the sex workers and it's safer for the communities. And in those communities where prostitution is legal, incidences of rape and other forms of sexual violence decrease.
Not just that, but incidents of prostitutes being in your neighborhood decrease. Because then you can write
place you can work from.
Yeah, then you write ordinances that says this is the red light district.
Yeah.
And one, the prostitutes want to work there because that's where the customers go to find them. You know, they're no longer.
Well, that actually used to happen in Salt Lake City. There was a red light district. I don't know what happened to it.
Was it a
but
legal red light district?
It was a legal red light district.
Wow.
And I don't know if that's just because the counties can vote to have red light districts or not. But
I was looking at,
But you know, I would even suggest this out there for Tooele. The red light districts don't use a lot of water, and we need businesses that don't use a lot of water. And you know,
get them
the
paying
taxes-
those commercial taxes.
and it's not like how many STDs are already out there anyway. I mean, then they can get like health care because they can
I was
afford it.
talking to my wife about this. So she served an LDS mission in Sweden. She said, "Oh, prostitution's been legal in Sweden for over 100 years," and the prostitutes register with the government, and the government requires them to have a doctor's exam once a month and get tested, and so it's a safe trade. And I'm not, and people would argue, well, we don't need the government to get involved in it at all. And I'm not a hardcore. I don't want to see any form or type of government. I would just like our government and our society to be less violent, more peaceful, and safer. And I think when you take these things that people find morally or individually reprehensible, I'm not advocating for any of these actions, but when you legalize them and let it be something that's safe, it's safer for the users, and it's safer for you as a adjacent member of society when you legalize these things.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. No, I worked at a brothel out in Nevada, and the prostitutes pay taxes and are members of the community, and every Wednesday they go down and pee in a cup or whatever they do. There was legalized prostitution in South Korea. They had, in both places, they had allocated areas where people go. So there wasn't, so you go in Nevada, you've got Nye County, and then you've got, whatever county Las Vegas is in. Now in Nye County, prostitution's legal. And I was in Pahrump, and even in, Reno, you don't see prostitutes walking around the casinos there because they've got a place where the prostitutes have a safe place. You're in a safe place. You're dealing with a structure and not, a guy in a purple suit. And
it's harder to murder prostitutes when they have like a safe place.
Well, thanks for derailing that good for me there, Dave. But what I'm saying is safer for the customer. So the customers would go there. So the prostitutes wouldn't go to the casinos, but you go to Las Vegas. And I don't know if you've been in a Las Vegas casino, but if you're in there as a gentleman by yourself, a lady that is dressed to the nines in a gown is going to come sit next to you wherever you are and start up a conversation because she's a prostitute and she's shopping for a John. You see what I'm saying? So if you have that allocated area, it pulls it out of the community. So you're not going to get prostitution where your kids are. You're not going to get it where your kid's not going to see the house of ill repute as he walks to the 7-Eleven. It's usually located a little ways out of town because that's the best way for that to function.
Yeah.
Freedom seems to always work better. It just does.
So I think when we legalize these things, and there's several areas, we empower people to make better, safer decisions on both sides, and it's a win-win.
And it allows you to keep away from it too.
Yeah, because banning it, and on the flip side of that, banning it has worked so well. We're such a perfect society.
Well, you're down in southern Utah, right?
Yeah.
And there are some drug problems down there, but in Salt Lake, try going to South Temple right now and keeping your kid from seeing drugs.
Yeah. Yeah. When I lived in Salt Lake for 2 years as a student at the U, I think the park down there, Pioneer Park,
Mm-hmm.
my wife, we just didn't go there. you know?
Yeah,
And
because
you were in kind of that downtown area, you know, my wife would just have anxiety because there's just people all over the place, intense, pushing around shopping carts.
Yep.
And, you know, I would kind of tease her and be like, what do you have against the homeless people, honey? But a lot of those homeless people are drug users, you know, they're people who can't function in our system because we don't allow legal drug use. And so because they can't have a job and they can't, you know, live in housing, they live on the streets, you know. And if drug use was legal, you know, what reduction would we see in homelessness if people could safely and legally use drugs and continue to have a job and be a part of society?
there would definitely be a large percentage drop in the homelessness.
Plus, treatment would be so much easier to access if it was
Oh yeah.
all at one point.
Oh
you know?
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I agree with you 100% there. The on all the vices, I think that we need to admit to ourselves that I should not just say the war on drugs, but the war on vice has failed.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to, I think we need to account for that. But anyways, we got two messages, both from the same guy, but I want you to just give out your good, strong libertarian closing message.
Okay, so just in summary to the listeners in the state of Utah, my focus in going to and running for the U.S. Senate would be peaceful foreign policy. What actions are we taking around the globe, and are those actions increasing the stability and safety and peace of citizens there, as well as, you know, here? I don't think those actions should be driven by economic or other geopolitical interests. Two, criminal justice reform. I would support bills that have been put forward in the past few years to end qualified immunity. I think there needs to be more accountability in policing and how police interact with people. You know, and in other countries, there's much more training for the police force, and they get better support. And here, you know, I feel like they're just kind of thrown out there, and just so often interactions between police and citizens result in violence. And it's like, why the hell did that happen? And, you know, all the negative attention is on the policemen. It's like, listen, we have a system that's broken, that I think a system that creates these violent conflicts. And we need to fix our policing reform. We got to strike down victimless crime laws, you know, the war on vices like drugs, prostitution, and such. That would get all these people out of prison and back as functioning members of society. You know, there's so many nonviolent offenders in jail. You know, Brittany Griner's being detained in Russia right now for possession of marijuana, and members of the Congress across the political spectrum have decried it as this awful travesty. It's like, you realize over 100,000 people every year in the U.S. are jailed for the exact same offense that you are decrying over there in Russia.
That is the funniest thing.
And you could literally author a bill and put it forward in Congress and fix that next week for the United States of America. And I'm like, what's going on in people's heads? Where's the disconnect here of like, this needs to be fixed? Why aren't we doing it?
100%. Even if they just pulled federal support so that no DEA showed up to aid them just on marijuana, the states would stop enforcing it because the states can't afford to enforce it.
And I want to say a special thank you to President Putin for highlighting the hypocrisy of my government with its marijuana laws. Thank you, Mr. Putin.
Absolutely. And the third thing is money and politics and corporate welfare. You know, we have these institutions that we have. There's so much money. You look at Mike Lee and Evan McMullins. You go on and look at all the money coming into their campaigns. So the FES, Federal Elections Security, is that where you look it all up? You know, you can look at all the corporate donors. You can look at all the out-of-state money, and less than $1 million of their dollars come from in-state, and millions of other dollars are from out-of-state big corporations. I am a regular UDon. I'm a public school teacher. I'm a cross country and track and tennis coach. I've got 4 kids, 2 dogs. Like, I'm not going to government to help myself or enrich myself. I've got other hobbies, but the these travesties that I see unfolding in our country, in our criminal justice system, the people we're hurting through our war on vices, the people we're hurting around the globe through our violent foreign policy. We've got to fix that. And right now, I feel like our government serves the military industrial complex and big corporations, too big to fail, bailouts on the back of the people. We're suffering record inflation right now. And that record inflation has absolutely been driven by the past, 4 presidencies just turning on this federal tap of imaginary money and just saying, hey, all these companies, if we get into a tight spot, let's just print them through it. Let's just print them through it. And, I'm not going to make a doomsday prediction or anything like that, but I have legitimate anxiety. And I think many residents of our state have legitimate anxiety of what's going to happen in the next few years. What's going to happen to our housing market? What's going to happen to, like, how secure is my job if suddenly we have a massive depression and it's going to be impossible to print our way out of it at some point. Like, it's like, okay, this money's not worth anything. We've seen countries that have gone into hyperinflation and everything has just crashed and it's riots in the streets. Is that the trajectory we're heading on? And I'm not saying that's going to happen next year or in X years or anything like that. I'm not trying to make a prediction or anything, but I'm just acknowledging the anxiety that I feel, and I feel many state residents of our state feel, and our nation feel. Like, where are we headed as a nation, and what are we really, like, what's important? And I just want to refocus on, hey, peace, friendship. Let's fix our broken criminal justice system. Let's be smart. Let's make things legal and safe. Okay, we can't ban these things away. And let's return to sound money. I feel like I'm getting robbed. I don't know what I can do with my money, and if I'm saving money and inflation is 10%, and I have it in a certificate of deposit and it's maybe like 2%. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm being incentivized to not save money. Maybe I should just spend it as fast as I make it or something. But these are big issues that I want to tackle on the federal level.
I can make the suggestion that you buy Bitcoin, but I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. However, it is my idea that keeps hope inside of me that I can stabilize some form of currency for when the dollar collapses, because it is a technological advancement that I don't think people even realize exists, and how it even functions and can save us from the economic doom that's coming. Because you're right, this anxiety that you feel, it's a feeling of guilt, anger, and resentment, because what our federal government is doing is robbing the next generation and the generation after that. I mean, it takes some pretty nimble fingers to pick the pockets of a fetus, but our government is able to accomplish that mission quite successfully. And I think that anxiety that you're feeling, James, is just that.
Oh, yeah. Pick the pocket. 100%. I like the message. Sound money. You had me at sound money. That's the sexiest phrase in the English language, right next to reduce the size of government. Please, a little bit, just a scotch. But anyways, let's go. We got 2 comments, both from the same guy, and then we'll cut the show loose. But I want you to hang on for just a second after. Corey says, I want to see a progressive candidate one day. Okay, Corey,
will do.
Corey, run as a progressive.
Yeah, you know? Corey, you can step up to the plate, man. Yeah, nothing's holding you back.
You can run in there as now he says Bull Moose, which of course is Teddy Roosevelt's party. I would say our Democrats carry the torch for progressivism. But let's remember Woodrow Wilson, he was a progressive as well. And okay. Corey also says, I don't think they are dissuaded when you don't kneel to them. I think they are dissuaded when don't produce logical fact. Could be. I do know that a recognizable number of Bernie supporters in 2016 voted for Trump because they were mad at the Democrat Party for shafting Bernie. And,
Don't blame them.
Let's just say that people don't burn down cities unless they demand you kneel. I'm just going to put it like that. Anyways, James, thanks for coming on. Those are starting to get rowdy. That's the alarm clock for the show, apparently. Thanks for coming on. Libertarian for Utah Senate. James Hansen. I didn't even flash his website up on there. I had it pulled up, had a window for it, and I'll flash it up now.
It's Jimmy for Utah. It's actually the number 4 Utah.
Yeah, I'm gonna flash it up there now as we say goodbye to him, so you can see it. But yeah, Jimmy, the number 4. Well, Jimmy4Utah.com.
Oh yeah, it does work there too. So
Jimmy4Utah.com. Go and check it out.
He's got a great message.
Yeah, James Hansen, Jimmy Hansen. He has 4 kids. Outstanding stuff. Humana. But jump on there, join him. He's a school teacher. He's down in Monument Valley. So I imagine he's helping a lot of the indigenous down there through their school projects and all that stuff. Teaching science to kids, so he's getting them
He can speak Chinese.
Yeah,
Mandarin. Is that what you speak?
Mandarin Chinese.
Yep.
Yeah. I actually thought I ought to reach out on Twitter and try to reach out to, China party officials and Taiwanese party officials and in Chinese, be like, hey, let's come to the table. Let's figure this out.
It's definitely an important skill.
Everyone's economic and the civilians.
I would avoid doing that because it's illegal for you to do under our current government.
Oh, as a citizen to try to talk to.
Yes, it is. I think it's the what's the act that makes it illegal for you to try to
Espionage Act?
Know Your Lane Act.
It's like not the Dunbar Act.
Sit Down Peasant Act.
I'll remember it as soon as the show's over.
So
but
it's
anyways,
illegal to try to build international connections and
yes, it is.
Peace.
Yes, it is 100% illegal for you to do, and they have
You
tried
get a lawyer.
people on that. But anyways, stick around. So, guys, check him out. James Hansen, Utah Libertarian Party. Jimmy4Utah.com. It works if you put in the number 4 or type in 4. You'll recognize it when you see it. Young guy, long hair, glasses. He looks like a science teacher. You'll see that right away. He just all of a sudden. Have you thought about wearing more tweed?
I have one tweed jacket.
There you go.
I try to wear a jacket every day to school, so I do have one tweed jacket.
Good.
I thought I might have to take up pipe smoking and get the whole kind of professor vibe. No.
For sure. All right, guys, check him out. Give him a listen. We will see you guys. We're not going to be in here Friday because
This was our Friday show. I gotta go.
Dave's taking his wife somewhere.
Gotta go back to the motherland.
Yeah, whatever she's got Dave doing. But anyways, so we'll see you guys next Friday. Have a good week, a good weekend, and we'll see you next week.